Walking among the clouds is a unique experience. Colombia has the privilege of having many ecosystems due to its geographical location. Among them, my favorites are those in the high mountains of the Andes and the Sierra Nevada. Cloud forests are found between 5,000 and 10,000 feet above the sea level. And have high levels of humidity caused by rain, fog of rivers and creeks. Low trees and bushes are covered with moss and lichens, with abundant bromeliads, orchids, and ferns. The upper limit of the cloud forest merges with a fantastic ecosystem, the paramos, or moorlands. These magical ecosystems develop at altitudes greater than 10,000 feet above the sea level. It is difficult to imagine their stunning and colorful gardens wrapped in fog and light rain. More than half of the paramos on the planet are found in Colombia, and the rest are in Ecuador, Venezuela, Costa Rica, and Panama. Today, I want to invite you on a magical trip through some of the most beautiful paramos hidden in the Colombian mountains. The Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. My first sunrise at the top of Cerro Kennedy in the Sierra Nevada was one of the most vital experiences I have ever had. The journey of several hours in the middle of the night is done along a path that looks more like a riverbed than a road. The 4x4 vehicle lurched and struggled through the rain and fog. Upon reaching the summit, located at 10,170 feet above the sea level, the wind was blowing strongly, and the wait became difficult. The cold pierced through my clothing, and there was still no trace or dawn. Little by little, a faint glow appeared on the horizon. Only at that moment did I realize where I was. An ocean of clouds rested on the mountains, wrapping them in the stillness of darkness. The pink, yellow, and gold tones began to shine, and the wind decided to wake up the clouds under my feet. At first, they moved slowly, sliding gently, but the gust of wind pushed them insistently, and the static and calm landscape was transformed into a swirl of colors. The wax palms stood out, raising their tall featherhead crowns among the whiteness of the fog. While in the background, the silhouettes of the highest peaks of the Sierra Nevada materialized. I couldn't say precisely how long this fantastic display lasted, but the camera allowed me to save those magical moments. Once the sun shone brightly, I began to walk through a world that was unknown to me. Trees were small, covered with moss and lichens, and the plants have tiny hairs that allow them to trap and store water from the mist. Hiking along the trail, surrounded by shiny plants, flowers, spider webs, and lichens covered with tiny crystal drops, was an unforgettable experience. I have been lucky to go back to this place many times, and each time it is different, but equally profound and marvelous. On my way down, I love to walk instead of going in the car. I hear the loud fluttering of the hummingbirds searching for nectar after hibernating each night. Their metabolism allows them to go a few hours without eating, but they are the first to wake up to drink among the flowers. I see the large flocks of parrots flying through the fog with their happy chattering, and I enjoy watching the birds of prey soaring between the high peaks with their still and calm flights. There is a place on the path that I especially like, where the moss and the lichens that cover the rock walls have spectacular colors. I stop to photograph the bromeliads and ferns clinging to the vertical slopes, and I find some bulky cushions of moss with an unthinkable colors: white, pink, and magenta. They store a large amount of water, which allows plants to grow with tiny flowers and fruits, food for the insects and smaller birds that flutter around them. That first encounter encouraged me to search for beautiful gardens in the high mountains. Since then, I have visited many regions of Colombia where these unique ecosystems emerge isolated like small islands on the highest peaks. The Perijá mountain range is the last vestige of the Andes, located in the extreme north of South America, in the border region between Colombia and Venezuela. Its highest peaks are 12,300 feet above the sea level. and its proximity to the Caribbean Sea implies many different thermal levels. The word Perijá comes from the indigenous Arawak word that means uneven, rough, and rocky surface. I think this is a very accurate description because that is what I saw up in the mountains. We started the trip when it was still dark. A very narrow road allowed us to climb quickly toward the high peaks of the mountain range. As we advanced, the faint light of dawn illuminated the vertical, bare walls of the mountain, which, despite of its proximity to the Sierra Nevada, had a very different landscape. I noticed the absence of espeletillas, commonly known as frailejones, or big monks. These are the typical vegetation of the paramo. Our guide explained that this region has suffered from arson fires for many years, and the land has been dedicated to livestock and agriculture. Many damaged areas were planted with non-native trees, such as conifers and eucalyptus. Currently, there is a program in which more than 100 families from the community are working to grow frailejones in the nurseries adjacent to the paramos. Despite the apparent damage to the ecosystem, I also appreciated how nature is resilient. Among the grasslands, the colorful plants of the paramos begin to emerge. I was delighted with my camera, photographing the bushes loaded with flowers and berries, food for the small endemic birds that live in the mountains. The Northern Highlands of Antioquia. I traveled to the Yarumal region, where very few visitors go, but it is a mandatory step for those heading from the south of the country to the Atlantic coast. I remember traveling along the road, which at that time was unpaved, with plunging cliffs and precipices. Among my most vivid memories is the fantastic vegetation covering the steep canyons, where hundreds of small waterfalls cascaded from the rocks lining the road in a dense jungle with colossal trees covered in lianas. The towering palm trees and the wonderful bright silver yarumo trees broke the dark green deep slopes. My dad never stopped in this road to enjoy the views because it was dangerous due to the number of landslides and the cold and wet weather. Not too long ago, I visited this region. It is located where the central mountain range of the Andes ends. Its foothills connect with the valleys of the Magdalena and Cauca rivers and the Atlantic and Pacific coasts. It is a privileged place with fantastic flora and fauna, where many resident and migratory birds coexist. Mining and intensive livestock farming for many years reduced the area of the paramo and the cloud forest. As in other regions of the country, the community, with the support of the conservation organizations, cares for the nurseries of hundreds of small speletias and other native endangered trees. The snow-capped volcano of Santa Isabel. The mountainous area of the Coffee Triangle is home to many species of birds, and when I search for them, I love to stop at every curve of the rural roads to explore with my camera the thick vegetation of the cloud forest. I enjoy the forest's low light and the damp scent of the soil and the birds calling. I photograph the flowering bromeliads and all the little jewels hidden among the giant ferns. The silvery yarumo trees and the towering wax palms. I also found countless waterfalls flowing from the glaciers. One of those beautiful roads took me to the snow-capped volcano of Santa Isabel. Upon entering the national park and starting to walk, I felt the excitement of visiting this beautiful place and the fatigue caused by the altitude. And my goal was not to reach the summit, but to enjoy the landscape and to be able to photograph it. Wrapped in my waterproof poncho, jumping in the mud puddles, and carrying my cameras in my dry backpack, I dedicated myself to living the experience that the mountain gave me on that humid and dark day. I felt the raindrops slide on my face, and the gusts of wind push me as they pleased. Strolling along that path allowed me to contemplate that spectacular landscape. There was water everywhere, in the rain and mist, in the plants and mosses, in the countless waterfalls, and the ice hidden in the shade of the plants. The volcano, also called Polekakasu in the language of the Quimbaya indigenous people, means snow princess. I did not get to contemplate her because the princess timidly hid in her blanket of clouds, but she gave me the fantastic experience of enjoying her beautiful landscape. Chasan National Park. Chasan National Park is just a few kilometers from the large city of Bogotá, where more than 8 million inhabitants survive the hectic traffic and the busy life of a large city. Crossing the barrier that restricts the park entrance allows you to enter a serene and peaceful place. The silence and immensity of the mountain transported me to an enchanted world where I photographed its incredible treasures. When I saw the mountains covered with tiny white dots like cotton flakes, it wasn't easy to believe that each was an Espalitia plant, the emblematic species of the Colombian paramos. The Espalitias grow very slowly, only 1 centimeter per year. They have a thick trunk, and their succulent plush leaves act like sponges, retaining water. They take moisture from the fog and release it through their roots. They store water and allow it to circulate to streams and rivers during drought. The leaves make a rosette at the top, and when they are dry, instead of falling off, they remain attached to the stem, protecting it from cold and solar radiation. The paramo is an enchanted garden surrounded by waterfalls that slide down the rock walls. Mosses, lichens, and fungi grow everywhere. I found various species of moss and liverwort plants. These tiny plants do not have roots or vascular tissue. Instead, they absorb water and nutrients from the air across their entire surface. What we see as little hairs is their way to anchoring themselves to the rocks and the soil. And spider webs vibrate loaded with tiny droplets when the wind blows. The paramos are home to species such as the spectacled bear, the Andean condor, the white-tailed deer, and many more. The speletias in turn protect and feed hundreds of species of birds, insects, spiders, amphibians, and reptiles. I am finishing this first segment of my trip to the paramos. Still, the magic doesn't end. The second part will come soon, where we will take a journey through the sacred lagoon of Guatavita, the remote paramo of Iguaque, the paramo of Oceta, known as the most beautiful paramo in the world, and finally, an extraordinary place, the National Park of the Puracé volcano.